Mike Sarraille, former SEAL team officer, world record holder, adventurer, natural-born leader. Legacy Expeditions and Folds of Honor on a mission to support veterans. In this episode, I had the pleasure of welcoming Mike Sarraille, a retired Navy SEAL, entrepreneur, CEO, best-selling author, and podcast host. But most of all, Mike is a proud leader, and not proud of himself, but immensely proud of his teams. And this is a true part of his DNA. Mike's impressive titles and accomplishments are truly remarkable, including breaking the long-standing skydiving record by ending it landing on trees during the 777 expedition in Australia. Sorry, I couldn't resist, Mike. In just 6 days, 6 hours, and 6 minutes, his team and him broke the world record for skydiving 7 continents. It was fascinating to hear Mike's perspective on titles and how they hold significance when you're young, but as you grow older, what truly matters is your credibility, reputation, character, and integrity. One of the highlights of our conversation was delving into the intense training and preparation that went into their record-breaking skydiving mission. Mike emphasized the importance of utilizing technology and the unique mindset of special operations personnel. It was incredible to hear about the level of precision and focus required to execute such a daring feat. We also touched on the challenges of transitioning from the military family and achievements to civilian life. Mike shared his personal experiences and the difficulties he faced when reintegrating into society. It was eye-opening to hear about the struggles that many veterans encounter, such as finding a sense of purpose in and adapting to a different lifestyle, something I can personally attest to. Mike's insights shed light on the importance of providing support and resources to help veterans navigate this transition successfully. So towards the end of our conversation, we discussed the charity mission of Legacy Expeditions. An organization founded by Mike, Legacy Expeditions aims to provide veterans with opportunities for personal growth and adventure through outdoor expeditions. Mike shared how these expeditions not only offer a chance for veterans to challenge themselves physically and mentally, but also regain and foster a strong sense of camaraderie and teamwork. Legacy Expeditions has been instrumental in helping veterans find a new sense of purpose and belonging after their military service. It was inspiring to hear about the positive impact this organization has had on the lives of so many individuals. Mike's dedication to giving back to his fellow veterans is truly commendable. Overall, my conversation with Mike was enlightening and thought-provoking. His experiences as a Navy SEAL and his journey transitioning into civilian life provided valuable insights into the unique challenges faced by veterans. And moreover, his work with Legacy Expeditions exemplifies the power of teamwork, personal growth, and giving back to the community by providing college scholarships to the spouses, children, and dependents of fallen military and emergency services heroes. So thank you, Mike, for joining me and sharing your incredible insights and experiences. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And to our listeners, remember to stay tuned for more inspiring conversations coming up on the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. You can find Mike at mikesarraille.com, links below, and on Insta at Mr. Sarraille, links below, and Sarraille spelt Sarraille, and support Folds of Honor at the link below in the show notes as well. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert from hownotodie.com.au. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, sponsored by these guys, mystate.com, the ultimate daily formula for optimum hormone health, stress management, energy, and performance. 100% natural and clinically proven ingredients. It provides everything you need to raise your game in a convenient, gut-friendly capsule. Links for my former shows are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest today, Mike Sarraille, all the way from USA. Thank you so much for your time.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, it was great to meet you in person. I appreciate you taking the time to come on. You're a hell of a title is great, or titles, and I'm really interested to talk about those and how you got to there, and of course about the expedition. But for the people who are listening here, retired Navy SEAL, entrepreneur, CEO, author, podcast host, but I know you for jumping into trees to try and break a world record. So, what made you want to break this world record by ending on trees in Australia, my friend?
Yeah, the trees were not planned. So to give the story, we jumped it in Murray Field, right?
Yeah,
In outside of Perth. So it was the last jump of 7 continents. We had to get it done. Winds were picking up to about 30 knots, which, as per certain guidelines, depending on what country you're jumping into, that's a no-go. But we jumped anyways, because again, we were raising money, and I was the guy who landed about 6 feet from the edge of the drop zone in between 2 trees. There's one guy was like 400 meters away. Another guy was about 400 or 500 meters away. But they got that on video. And as you know, and for a lot of the audience, with the special operations guys, they're just not going to let it go. And you've just got to blow it off. If not, it's like blood in the water, and the sharks will circle and they'll just keep giving you shit. But, dude, I appreciate the titles and everything, or at least mentioning them. But at the end of the day, man, let's be honest, when you're young and you want to try out for the squadron, like I want to be SAS or I want to be a Navy SEAL, those titles matter.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, you know what? Actually, it doesn't fucking matter. What matters is my credibility, my reputation, my character, my integrity. And if I'm respected by the right people, and notice I say right people, if I'm not respected by people who I don't hold in high regard, I just don't care, because I probably don't respect you and you probably suck at your job. But I keep accumulating titles, and that's not the goal. And the 4 world records that we set are like, I don't want to say they're meaningless. I'm proud that we did them as a team, and I hope they mean more to somebody else than they mean to me. But it's just like, you tell me the next challenge where I'm going to push myself outside my mental and comfort zones, which the business world has been the biggest challenge for me in learning this. Because I think when you're at the tier 1 level for your respective country, you've established some subject matter expertise. It does not mean that you have all the answers. In fact, usually you've been humbled enough to get there to realize that on a bad day, it could be your last day, no matter how much knowledge or how many combat deployments you accumulated. But man, I'm just looking to have fun. I'm looking for challenges. I'm looking to grow. And I'm looking more so to do it alongside team members, for that concept of shared adversity to forge bonds that are just never broken.
It's interesting, summing up sort of all the things you said there, Mike. It seems to be actions speak louder than words. And I like how you went there with the titles. And, I do the intro, the video, there's a trailer before this of where to find you and the show notes. I would like to focus now on the actions of what we talked about there. And I had to lead it in with a joke because it was a great start. 7 continents, 7 skydives, 7 days, legacy expeditions, raising money for Folds of Honor. I was lucky enough to have your sort of partner in crime here, Nick Cush, on a couple weeks ago. Can you please give us the background behind why you wanted to go into breaking this world record to raise money for Folds of Honor? Let's start with that, and we'll sort of jump around there.
I think we need to start with why you would have Nick Cush on your podcast. I'm joking, dude. I love that dude. I've never seen somebody more astute at building relationships. He's got like his black belt. It's amazing. And the guy's world class at skydiving. But I went to war twice with Nick, and I can't say enough about him. But so it was Nick was the first person I called. I called Nick in, God damn it, I think June of 2021.
Allow me to seek the notes here. I'm sure I wrote it down.
Yeah. Okay. So in June of 2021, I contacted Nick, and Nick and I had reconnected because, he was on the West Coast. I eventually went to the East Coast, and you lose touch. And we both retired around the same time. And he knew I was going to skydiving to Mount Everest, which was freaking awesome. Not on to Everest. around Everest. And I said, hey, man, the 777, 7 continents, 7 days, 7 skydives. It's always been like this laughable thing within the skydiving community. Like, yeah, it can never be done. And I mean, your special operations, when somebody says it's impossible, you're like, you mean improbable.
Yeah.
What I love about special operations, what I love about special operations, dude, is the mindset. And don't tell us something can't be done. There's a reason small teams, which special operations are small teams, go against numerically superior forces time and time again and come out on top. It's the caliber of the man, and it is the caliber of the mindset held universally across the team. And so, Nick is paid because he's the senior skydiver he does this. He's just like, I don't know, man. It's a lot of work. And he's like, he's trying to crack the nut. And because he is so versed and he is the subject matter expert at skydiving, I think I just had this lackadaisical attitude of like, Nick, just say yes, let's fucking do it. And he's like, okay, let me make a phone call. He brought in a guy named Tom Noonan.
Yes.
With it, okay, Tom Noonan?
No, he spoke about this. So
within the United States Parachute Association and the U.S. parachuting community or skydiving community, Tom is like an icon.
Mm-hmm.
He was the director of the USPA. He was heavy at UPT for the tandem, and he had a plan. Tom's like, I've been trying to do this for over a decade.
Oh, wow.
Laid out the plan, and we started looking at routes. And when I went to Everest, Tom sent me a sweet note. He's like, hey, man, you're going to do some of the most memorable jumps of your life. And he sent me some pictures of him jumping in Everest. And it was like the fifth day in Everest that we got a text from somebody saying Tom was killed on a skydive. And Nick covered the story.
Wow.
So at that point, we're like, oh, we just lost the guy with the plan. What do we do? And so at this point, Andy Stumpf, not really a well-known dude, supposedly served in the SEAL team. I'm joking. And he's got a big podcast, been on Rogan a number of times. Andy was involved in this process very early on. There was the three of us. And then we brought in Fred Williams from Complete Parachute Solutions, who's a former SEAL as well. And we started the planning, dude. 18 months of planning. The air route changed probably no less than 5 times. I think when we started in the first route we came up with had us on the airplane for 125 hours. And we're like, yeah, that's no good, man. That doesn't leave us any, what I call fudge or excess time. And so we kept changing it. And we finally got it down to, in a perfect world, a vacuum, if there was no delays, 65 hours on an airplane, flying all commercial. This is not a private jet. Why? Because we don't have the money to pay for a private jet. We're a bunch of broke, disabled veterans. And plus the optics too of doing that while we're trying to honor our fallen and tell their stories, as well as raise funds for Folds of Honors. The optics wouldn't have looked good if we're flying private all over the world. So, additionally, this playbook. The thing I love about special operations and how they mitigate risk that the civilian populace or civilian sector or private sector doesn't understand is that we don't have some magic playbook. We just drill. We train. So if you're going to go raid an Al-Qaeda senior leader's house in Syria and you have imagery of the house, the guys build a mock-up of it and they just do day runs, run it through the house 100 times, then put on their nods as night falls, and they do it again another 100. And they just do that for a week straight. Or it may be even a small part of the mission where they're flying in on the helicopter and they're going to fast rope down. They'll do that 20 times until everyone's comfortable. And that's how we buy down risk. So we followed the special operations playbook. And notice I'm not saying US special operations or Australian or British, because quite frankly, the US is a young country. We stole it from all you guys and just threw money at it. And of course we took it to another level. I'm joking, but we trained over 800 jumps amongst the team of 9.
Wow.
2 separate training camps to make sure that everyone was ready. We worked through certain scenarios like, hey, what if we land in Egypt and the cloud deck is at 1,000 feet above the ground and we go up to 13 and we can't see the drop zone? How are we going to jump? Because we got to jump. And so, GPSs in the ATAC system utilizing those and technology, bringing
Brilliant.
technology to bear, like special operations, to make sure we were prepared for all scenarios, and we were. And the guys just crushed it. We ended up setting 2 world records for the 6-continent record.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had done it previously at like 8 days, 7 hours, and 14 minutes. We did it in like 4 days, 8 hours and change. But with you in Australia, we set another 2 world records for 7 continents, both the tandem and sports skydiving, 6 days, 6 hours, and 6 minutes. And I mean, you saw us, man. Nobody cared about the records. It was just the fact that you did it with your boys, you did it with your team, and I'm never going to forget that.
Yeah, man, it must have been such a overwhelming rush of emotion, rush of different feelings. I'll ask you that straight up question is the easiest way, because I asked Nick, and the show's not published, you don't know the answer. What did it feel like landing that that plane at the last jump?
When I landed,
Sorry, no, my mistake. Sorry. I've got that slightly wrong because there's the photo in the front of the plane. What did it feel like after landing on the drop zone and then coming together with your boys to say, yep, we've pretty much done this?
I know exactly how I want to answer this. There was overwhelming pride, but if anyone understands me and how I tick, and I'll give you a good example. I don't like individual accomplishments, and like my what's the proper term? My senior enlisted, like the command sergeant majors or command master chiefs and my commanding officers, they learned very quickly, like where they would come pat me on the back and they'd be like, well, first off, don't touch me. But like, hey, sir, just don't do that. I don't need the pats on the back. Like just focus on the guys. I identify with a team. I was not a Rambo. I'm sure there's some Rambos out there. I didn't know too many. Because if you're a Rambo, that usually means you're going to be dead within the first 10 minutes of a movie on the battlefield. I love being part of a team. And you'll love this one. I always say that I was the bridesmaid, never the bride, meaning I was never the all-star in any of those teams. But man, I was happy to play what part I could. And so to be there with the guys to say, hey, we did it when everyone else said it was impossible. But then as we loaded the bus, and we couldn't be more thankful for all the local Australians that came out to support us. That's when like it sort of set in, like it's over. It's over. And like, it was literally within like 10 minutes. I'm like, well, that's done. And it's over. Like, what now? And I know for our, like the best operators I served with didn't really celebrate successes all that long. They didn't celebrate, or they didn't dwell on failures either. It was sort of like, that happened. I learned. What's the next ridgeline? And so we went to New York. Actually, we did one jump in Tampa, which was awesome because all the families were there.
Great.
And we did it for the 13 Americans that were killed during the withdrawal from Kabul. And so that was touching. And then we went to New York as a team, and we were on Fox and Friends. And again, I was so happy to watch the boys on live television representing the special operations community, the different services, raising money for Folds of Honor. And we had a great time. We got drunk, very drunk. In fact, I don't think those charges are going to be filed by the New York District Attorney against me. But
yeah, exactly.
I think they're dealing with Trump. I'm joking. But so I ended up back in New York on Fox and Friends because I wrote a book called The Everyday Warrior.
Awesome.
And so they had me on Fox and Friends to do an interview, and the interview goes well, and the book skyrockets to like number 84 of all books being sold. And I'm in my room, and my wife's like, that was great. It was so awesome. You did such a good job in the interview. She's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, this feels disgusting. I'm here by myself. Like, it's self-grandizing. I was just here with the team. Like, and it finally hit me at the age of 45.
Yeah.
Like, that was the moment I'm like, okay, I finally, and I'm okay with this, I finally understand what my DNA is. I am the team. I am a part of the team. It is we, fuck me. I just don't like it, man.
I hear, and not many people would understand. I I published the interview with Greg Pup Johnson, New Zealand SAS. I didn't work directly with him, but we knew each other in the unit. And I titled it The Difference Between Special Forces and Normal Humans. And it didn't mean it in an arrogant way. It was just we think differently. And we really do. And I really get what you're saying, because my role, Mike, was the New Zealand SAS counter-terrorist team. So we were the Black Role Standby Squadron and called the team. And what amazed me when I first saw that squadron in action was just what those guys could get done. It was physically impossible. It looked like it was physically impossible. Then when they start moving, even just an air move and things, it was just the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, or some fancy term like that. It just amazed me. I couldn't get around what was happening, and I can understand your feeling, saying, or your statement. That's what your DNA is. And I think once you come to accept that, that's great, because before that, there's a lot of conflict that goes on. You went from military world to business world. You went from military world to civilian world, and there's conflict there. And then there's the classic one people talk about, transition. You're not in the army now. You got to change. Special forces, special operations, whatever word you want to use, we have a different mindset because we were selected for that. So if you can accept that, and then this is a realization you got it at, you said 45. It's hitting me almost at 50.
I'm just ahead of my peers. It's okay. I pick up things. I'm joking, man. We're probably both slow on the uptake.
Exactly. Crayons. As once you realize that, you can use that mindset when it's appropriate, and dial it back when it's inappropriate. So use it when it's at the right time to switch it on, which it was, and then dial back some of that mindset when it's not going to be the best thing in the world to be that special forces guy. But I understand what you mean about the team, and I'd have to say congratulations to you all, because when I saw you guys in Australia, you jumped out of the van to get ready for the jump. You looked tired. You looked like a deer in the headlights. Where the hell are we, sort of thing. You're in the middle of the desert for a start, straight up. And then once it was go time, once you guys sort of shook out, it was go time, bang. And I recognized, that's the team. My partner, Jess, who's been in high-end sports, she couldn't believe what you guys were doing. And for you guys, it was just normal. So I'm saying congratulations, because you guys got a taste of that, a part of that again in 2023.
Yeah. One, I didn't know we looked that tired. I guess we had no sense. It's not like we were looking in the mirror. It's special operations. One, you got to understand. So a very, very, very small subset of the world serves in special operations. And so what they know is special operations, they get from what? The movies. And the movies will always, hey, you got to sell films. So you've got to have the guy who's a total dick. You've got to have the guy who's the hugger. You got to play to the lowest common denominator, that these are just a bunch of killers. But at the end of the day, man, and it's funny you said while you were watching the team, these are husbands, these are fathers, these are sons, these are brothers. And yes, there are sisters in arms that are doing things for us as well alongside us in the military. But these men within the tier 1 community, be it SAS, SBS from the different countries, JSOC, the list goes on. They are the most lethal warriors in the world. And what people get wrong is that, they think they're just some meatheads that couldn't barely graduated high school, as we call it in the US. No, actually, they're highly educated. The bar to get into special operations is higher, much higher than when I screened.
Yeah.
And they're the most lethal warriors, but they are kind, they're respectful, they're empathetic. But as you talk, what I love, and you talked about dialing it in. You guys got out of the van. It was the gear, checking through your rig, knowing that I'm tired. And so I'm not going to do one check. I'm going to do 2 checks on my pins. I'm going to ask a buddy to look at my stuff, knowing that even if I do 2 checks, because sleep deprivation increases the risk profile, we were double checking. Like, this is the last jump. God help us if there's nothing we could have done in the or the preparation phase that prevented somebody from getting hurt. So we were compensating there. But you said something that reminded me. So I went through assessment and selection for my community when I went to JSOC, and almost went right on deployment to Afghanistan. And the first mission with these guys, I'm a brand new guy, even though I've been in the SEAL teams for a while, I think 5 to 6 years by that point. New guy at this new level. And it was the night that Adam Brown was killed. And it was one of the worst missions they said they ran in Afghanistan. And I had the widest eyes as I'm watching these seasoned tier 1 guys jump from rooftop to rooftop and fight off. Like, we were surrounded in a valley. This is 2010, that Americans or any of the coalition forces had ever been in.
Yeah.
9 years. We were in Afghanistan for 9 years, and no friendly forces had been in this valley. It was a total safe haven. Opened up on us. And to watch these men do what they did, and we finally got out of that valley. Unfortunately, Adam Brown was killed. A couple guys were wounded. But I went to again, we call it master chief, or a command master chief, or the troop chief. It was a guy named Lou Langlis, who was then killed on Extortion 17, the next deployment. French Canadian, awesome dude. And I went up to him, and he had wide eyes, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, man?" I'm like, "I've never seen a military unit operate like that." And I was in 2 battles up to that point in Iraq, and I've never seen that. And he basically said something along the lines of, "Welcome to the show," which means U.S. baseball. When you make it to the major leagues, they say, "Welcome to the show." But it was also realization that, I might have went through assessment and selection, but I'm like, oh my God, I don't belong here. And what I meant by that is I've got to step up my game, and I've got to accelerate my maturation and my skills quicker, or they're going to recognize that I don't belong here. And so I had to fight to stay at that place every day.
Yeah.
And it wore me out to the point after, like, I think it was 5, 6 years. I'm like, hey, it's just my time. Somebody who had more piss and vinegar was going to come behind me, who was smarter, who was probably better, that would pick up the torch and take it to the next level.
That's really interesting you said that. And DJ Shipley actually spoke about that from GBRS Group. Reading the
I went to Buds.
Sorry?
I went to Buds with DJ.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
How funny.
Wow, small world. Yeah, look, he talked about the All Blacks, the book about the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team, and one of the things in there with the ethos is leave the jersey in a better place than you found it. You, not only in that statement, but before that, have embodied humility. And one of the tenets of New Zealand SAS is humor and humility. So we started with humor, and now we got humility. And what it showed me was then knowing, hey, you may not be, there may be other people better than you, but what was interesting was you talked about the humility of being shown in maybe the imposter syndrome, and then also the minimization that you've talked about through the whole time. We just like that so often. And the reason why isn't because you've got, this is not you in general, sorry, this is SF in general. We haven't got low self-esteem. We're humble that we want to be better ourselves, and it's for the better of the team, which is interesting because that's what you kind of do in the leadership side. You're hopefully embodying that in what you're teaching outside that as well.
So in both books, I wrote this one, The Talent War, how special operations and great organizations win on talent. And it was basically dissecting the U.S. Army Special Forces assessment and selection process. And then I did write about it in this book, but we broke down a bucket of attributes. We found 9 attributes that we considered, looking at all domains, like an investment banker who's the top of his game, an athlete, a special operations guy, a business leader. They had, to some degree, these 9 attributes. We renamed what you're talking about humble confidence.
Right.
Now, to a lot of people, what they get wrong is they're like, oh, that special operations guy's arrogant. No, he's just a dick. But he's his authentic self. He's just not a outwardly going guy. You're not assessing attributes correctly. And so to some people, special operations guys may seem arrogant. but they're also, at the same regard, and you know this, they're closed. It's hard to get into those circles, and so it may seem like they're pushing you off and they want nothing to do. But what I found was, they are humble, especially the ones that have a lot of combat under the belt, know that with each firefight, you realize there's so much you don't know and how lucky you are to make it out of that firefight and onto the next. So humble in the fact that they know they can accomplish whatever you throw at them. They know probably failure is going to be involved in the process to a high degree. Whenever you're pursuing excellence, failure is a part of the process. And I can give you a good example of that for your listeners. And, so the confidence to get the job done, that humble confidence is powerful to me. And the best operators were humbly confident, and they had the ability to laugh at themselves when they fell. Quite literally, if they fell on their face, they would be the first ones laughing. They'd be like, okay, help me up, guys. Let's get back to after this until we get it done. When we talk about excellence, one, there's a stark difference between excellence and perfection. Perfection is absolute bullshit. It's a mirage. It doesn't exist. But you should always be pursuing excellence. When you understand excellence and the definition of it, that it is a lifelong pursuit of continual progress and betterment with no finite end. Life gets, you reframe how you look at life. I'm sure you remember this one, but for the readers or the listeners that don't, in 1981, there was it 1981 or 1982? I'm getting my dates mixed up. 52 Americans were taken hostage in Tehran. And the Americans, through President Carter, put together a last-ditch effort to a hostage rescue to go get them. And Delta Force, on their first big operation, had the lead. And they got to a desert logger site, a black site, and a CH-53 collided with a C-130. 8 Americans were killed. They had to leave the bodies behind because it's a burning wreckage. They couldn't get them out. And so out in the middle of the desert, you've got this big fireball. They had to get back on the C-130s that were intact and fly back to Oman, where they staged out of. And it was a textbook failure. My wife is coming to pick up my Dutch Shepherd here, so I apologize. Awesome. Go, buddy. Love you, baby. So they get back to Oman, which is run by some British contractors, and I'll tell that part of the story. But we consider that today a watershed moment in special operations history, not U.S. special operations, but special operations across the coalition forces. Because we've learned so much from you guys. When you have an operation and you have lessons learned, the thing I love about the Five Eyes is we share those lessons that are technically not top secret. And we've learned so much from you guys, and hopefully you've learned from us. But so it's a watershed moment in that failed operation turned into one of the best things that could have happened. Now, when I say that, 8 Americans died, and we eventually got the hostages out through negotiations. But JSOC was formed out of that failure. A lot of the TTPs and SOPs that we utilize were forged out of that failure. It's, Delta is now one of the premier counterterrorism units, and it's because of that. Not in spite of that, but because of that, because they learned from it. They went into what we consider to be one of the most valuable tools in special operations, the after action review. What was planned? What happened? What went according to plan? More importantly, what went wrong, and how do we fix it moving forward? And they've probably failed 1,000 times since to become one of the most elite or respected units in the world. So you've got to reframe how you look at failure, man. It's just part of the process. It doesn't mean you have to like it, but you have to respect it.
I love that you went there originally, saying it's continual growth and betterment. I was lucky enough to interview Tom and Jen Satterley of the All Secure Foundation, Delta, former Delta operator, and your wife got the dog. I just got my Black Rifle coffee.
There you go.
Thank you. So I asked them a question. I asked Chris Van Sant, also former Delta Force and associated with All Secure Foundation, um, sort of where they are at now. I asked them to do a 2-word check-in, and one of them was about continual growth. I'm a work in progress, and this was related to PTSD and mental health. And Chris got in work in progress, and I wouldn't let Tom and Jen say the same answer, but it was just beautiful to watch them. It's all about growth. And you're right, the pursuit of excellence isn't about getting it perfect, and it's a continual process, and they have had setbacks. If you just looked at those, you'd think, oh, I'm a failure, but it's always growing, always pushing forwards. So I absolutely agree with what you've said there, Mike.
All those guys are studs. Because Chris, Tom Satterley, they correct me if I'm wrong, they were all in the Battle of Mogadishu. What is it? The Battle of the Black Sea, I believe. No.
I believe so. The Battle of Mogadishu. Tom was, and I touched. I made a mistake in the show touching on it. I thought that, you can lead with that to get more people to view the most amazing message that All Secure Foundation gets across. And I probably shouldn't have done it, but yeah, it was. He was in that. Chris was infamous or famous, more like for capturing Saddam Hussein.
Okay. Studs, man. Studs. Yeah, I remember that when Black Hawk Down happened, just
Yeah.
everyone's jaw just dropped for what those guys went through and the fact that they continue to serve after, I think, the world of them.
Yeah, they were. It was amazing. And look, that show drops this week, and it was an honor. It always is. I mean, it's amazing to be able to speak to people through the interwebs here, but it was an honor to speak to them, and it was beautiful to hear their stories. A couple together. I would like to thank you so much for talking about our mindsets, and I might come back to that. I'm going to talk about your journey to how you got to that mindset now at 45. But I'd like to just tie a bow in the charity, in the mission you did. Legacy expeditions, doing the 777 mission, but raising money for Folds of Honor. Can I get you to talk through what Folds of Honor does with the scholarships and why you chose that charity that you've spoken so highly about, wanting to put the spotlight on that and not so much on the world record?
So we jumped in honor of one of our fallen on every continent. I don't know if you heard, I think it was Logan spoke about
It was
Matt
Logan.
Abate, Australia in Perth. That was the continent he was assigned with. But Folds of Honor, and so for all of our expeditions, we choose a veteran nonprofit that's doing good work. And we also look at how many cents on the dollar go to the actual programs that they preach.
Yes.
For Folds of Honor and Special Operations Warriors Foundation, it's like 90 cents on the dollar. So 10 cents go to the organization to run it, and then 90 cents of every dollar goes to the actual programs.
Great.
Folds of Honor does educational scholarships for spouses and kids of either disabled veterans who've just fallen on rough times, or deceased soldiers or KIA. Now they've expanded that to first responders, and just in case, first responders is different in New Zealand or Australia. That's our cops, our firefighters and stuff like that. So there's nothing greater that we can do than to secure the legacy of those we left behind. And to me, that legacy means securing an education for their children, and that they have every advantage to do well in life, even if they don't have their father or mother who didn't return from war. And so we've got another expedition. Andy, Nick, and I are not participating in this expedition. We are helping 6 other special operations guys row Drake's Passage, 6 of them. And Drake's Passage is from the southern tip of Antarctica. I'm sorry, southern tip of South America to the tip of Antarctica.
Wow.
It's like 650 miles. But what makes Drake's Passage interesting is that it's where the Southern Sea, Atlantic, and Pacific Ocean collide.
Yeah.
And because they have no landmass to dampen the winds, it's the most treacherous stretch of sea. Something like 20,000 sailors and 800 ships have been lost in this stretch. And so for that one, it looks like I want to hold off on what we're talking to a number of foundations, but those 6 guys who are crazy, and I will be on the support vessel, supporting them throughout the whole journey, and we'll do a documentary on it. They're going to raise funds for a good nonprofit. We've yet to finalize that decision, but when we do, I'll let you know.
That sounds like an amazing expedition. Sir Peter Blake, rest in peace, New Zealand, one of the world's greatest adventurers, actually. He was a sailor, and he was going through that. I'm not sure if that passage was that part of the world. He was going so fast in the Whitbread Round the World Challenge, they had to put a chain on his catamaran as a brake, because he was going to fly around it.
A sea anchor, yeah.
That's brilliant, and I'm such a crayon guy. I really am. A friend of mine, Gary, he runs a company called Strongmend. It's only after about a year of knowing him, and he was on the show, that it was mental health for high performing individuals. Strongmend. I just realized what legacy expeditions means, and I love the term you've got. You're doing expeditions for the legacy of all the things we've been part of, or been lucky to know about. And yeah, I just had that light bulb moment of why you named that company. So that's really, really cool. And going back to Folds of Honor, that's amazing that they've got a charity that picks up the broken pieces, as it were. Because you said spouses, and I had it slightly wrong. I thought it was just for the offspring, for the children and so on. But what if the spouse hasn't worked?
So
Wow.
she's eligible as well.
Wow.
And great organization, Larry, and we would not have been able to pull off the 777 if it were not for Folds of Honor, and especially a guy named Larry Robinson, who believed in us, that knew the price tag, helped us fundraise the sponsorship money to pull it off. And we are grateful for the opportunity. If you want to, let's just say if there's an application process to get on the team, I wouldn't have been selected. There's a lot of special operations guys that are much more deserving to be on that than I was. I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo myself either, but if I did do one thing well in the military, it was the ability to identify a mission and then just do the planning and preparation to prepare and hopefully secure success before we even stepped outside the wire. And I do, like, that's the nerdiest thing. You don't go into special operations to be like a really good planner and really good at PowerPoint. You do it to be, because again, in the movies, you see the guys shooting the guns and fighting, and I did that. I did my fair share of that, but as an officer, it finally dawned on me very early. On my second deployment in Iraq, I lost Michael Mansour, who had to jump on her. He jumped on her grenade 3 feet from me, as well as another SEAL, and he had to give his life. And that one still doesn't sit well with me today. And I just, like, the worst thing after something like that, and I had, the guy to his left and I was to his right, we both had like 30 holes in the legs from the grenade that went off. Had he not smothered it, we would have eaten shrapnel to the face and killed. But I kept reviewing the plan. What did I miss? What did I miss? How did this happen? I had all the other rooftops secured and locked down, looking at the mutually supporting Overwatch, and just keep replaying it in my head. And I still do in a lot of ways to this day. But I walked away with a phrase that I would pass to the younger officers. And I said, there's a thing that should remain in your mind. And I said it earlier on this podcast regarding how we were checking our gear and then double checking our gear in Australia because we were so tired. I said, don't ask yourself, or don't put yourself in a position after a mission and having lost a guy to ask yourself, God help me, what could I have done in the mission planning and preparation to have prevented this guy from getting killed? I said, you never want to have to ask yourself that question at the end of a mission. And after I lost Mikey, that was sort of a guiding principle. So I was always always looking at the plan. I had the big battle book with me every time I went out, and even on the helicopter, flight into a lot of the missions in Afghanistan, sitting there going through the checklists and the assets overhead and saying, what am I missing? What am I missing? What am I missing? And didn't always work out in my favor, but I'd say, 99 times out of 100, it did. But there's always some things you can't account for. And you can do all the contingency planning in the world, and then something just comes out of left field for which you weren't planned. You didn't have planned, or you just couldn't have counted for due to lack of imagination.
Thank you for so clearly explaining the process, and most importantly, the gravity of the situation if it doesn't go to plan, or if something unexpected, also not going to plan, occurs, because it could mean fatal consequences. And thank you for speaking about your situation. I now want to take you back to the 777. You had great planning. Nobody stoved in. You smashed the 4 world records, but I know something happened on that you sure as hell didn't plan for. So what happened flight wise, and what did you do to overcome that insane obstacle?
Okay, you're going there. I thought Nick had told you something about me, and I'm like, oh, that mother. If this is for public consumption, he's embarrassing. No, I'm joking. So when we conducted the second jump in Chile, Santiago, outside of Santiago, Chile, we had a little bit of time. Some guys got like an hour of sleep, and we had a red eye from Santiago to Miami. And we were due to land in Miami at 6:30 a.m. and then depart at roughly, I think it was like 4:30 p.m. from Miami direct to Barcelona. So while we were in the air, the NOTAMs system, which is Notice to Airmen and Mariners, I believe I might be getting that wrong. It's the coordination thing for flight routes and everything else. The last time it went down was 9/11, when the big terrorist attacks in New York happened. That's the last time the NOTAM system went down. And let's see, at this point, you're what? That happened basically 22 years ago, a little less. And while we're in the air from Santiago to Miami, the NOTAM system goes down. And so as we land, and of course, guys are waking up as we land, and then you're turning on your cell phones, all those text messages from American Airlines are popping up like bloop, bloop, bloop. Your flight has been canceled. All civilian flights have been canceled. And I'm like, of all the things, like it couldn't wait a week. So, what I loved about this group and why I was so proud is guys look at each other and they're just shaking their heads and they're like, you got to be kidding me. Again, lack of imagination. Like, we couldn't have dreamt this up.
No, exactly.
So we asked ourselves, okay, what's the situation? What's the problems we're facing? Is it big enough that it requires our attention? It was. Our flight is canceled. We're going to be off schedule, and we're not, now we're on schedule to do this thing in like 10 days.
Oh.
So what's the main thing? And somebody said, well, the main thing is getting to the drop zone in Miami to complete this jump. Let's get in the cars and we'll talk through this on the way. So we scoped out the problem. It was clearly identifiable. And then we said, okay, opened it to the room, suggestions. Like, what do we do? And everyone's like, well, let's call American Airlines. What do they project? When do they think the flights will be back on? Because this thing can't last all day. America will implode if they can't fly somewhere. And we weren't getting a good answer. So we're like, that's off the table. It was the Canadian. And our Canadian is a tier 1 guy, JTF 2, which is Canada's tier 1 force. His name is Glenn, God darn it. Glenn Cowan. Sorry, I'm thinking of Glenn Powell, the actor. Glenn Cowan. And Glenn said, well, why don't we charter a flight? And we all look at Glenn and we're like, okay, let me go into my savings account. And, oh, nope, that's not going to happen. And he's like, I know. And I'm like, well, what are you saying? He's like, let me make some calls, man. We're doing something that's noble. We're doing it for a good cause. There's got to be people out there that can help us. So he made some calls, and we made some calls, and eventually we made it happen. And some good, one good Canadian and one great American put in, helped us get a private jet. And so we flew private, and we didn't post this on social media because, again, the optics were like, none of us felt clean stepping onto a G5. We're like, this just doesn't feel right. But we did. We got to Barcelona. We had another set of problems in Barcelona, but nobody lost their head. They simply said, "Hey, here's the problem. Here's the scope of the problem. Here are viable solutions. What's the best course of action? Let's go all in on that. And if that doesn't work out, we'll go to the second course of action." And the guys got it done, man.
Yeah, that blew my mind. It really did when I heard that story, because it's literally the world has been pulled out from underneath you. The only way you can do this is flying. You got the down from in the triple figures down to 60 or so hours, and suddenly nothing can fly across America. So it really does show the caliber of the mindset, which is what what you spoke about in the first half. The mindset of that individual is not a failure mindset, not a give up mindset. It's a, what can we do? How can I help here? And Canadian guy literally is going, Glenn's saying, right, well, what about this? Instead of going, well, that won't work. It's brilliant to see.
Glenn Cowan, you talk about mindset and like overly positive. Sometimes Glenn is so overly positive, it pisses me off when I just like, hey, just be pissed for a little bit, dude. Just give me 30 seconds to a minute.
Does he say sorry all the time?
Oh yeah. It's no, he is you talk about a good dude. And I met him, funny enough, through an incident. I went up. So I like to go to Ottawa for Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
Because you guys that's across the UK, correct? Is on November 11th. That's Remembrance Day.
Remembrance Day and Anzac Day. Yep. The two of those are huge for us. Yes.
And so for us, that's like Veterans Day, which I don't know a veteran who wants a pat on the back. But so I go up there to celebrate the fallen rather than to celebrate us veterans that are alive.
Exactly.
And there was an incident in 2014 where we got in a massive fight. I'm in uniform. My SEAL trident has been ripped off. My ribbons have been robbed. And this is by Canadian Armed Forces. And let's just say there's a plaque in one of the JTF2 rooms dedicated to me that says, it's got my trident with a plaque and a funny, inscription on it about
awesome.
An international incident that was averted. So Glenn's been a close friend since 2014.
Oh, it's amazing going into those history rooms and seeing, because like you said near the start, all people know about special forces guys is the movies, and then when you see what we bring it down to, we had an award each week, because in the team, as you know, you're just training over and over. You're training kill house, you're training fast roping on the towers, all this stuff. And at the end of the week, on the early knockoff Friday, we had a Knob of the Week award. And it was a plaque with a doorknob. And it was the person that had made the biggest screw up of the week. And it's there, we got to laugh at ourselves. It's there to remind the guy, hang on a sec, you do that, it might not end up well then, but it might not end up well the next time. You might play yourself up or worse, someone else. But yeah, Knob of the Week award, it sure brought you back to some version of humility and humor.
It's, if you tried to replicate the environment of a team room in the private sector, you'd have lawsuits left and right. You just there is no inclusiveness as the current private sector describes it or defines it, and that's what I miss, man. You're just not going to replicate that, and I think that's why it's hard for a lot of veterans getting out. Is like, the sooner you can come to the reality of you will never replicate that environment or that support network again. It doesn't exist in the private sector. And that actually should put a smile on your face that you got to experience that in life, where a lot of people will never feel, and I use this word, such love. It is a tough, cutthroat environment, but there's an emotional intimacy amongst the operators and SAS and all these units And it's not like we're sitting around, um, hugging each other, but there is an emotional intimacy that just can never be replaced.
I
And
have
it's as
never,
close to tribe as possible.
again, eureka moment. I've never thought of that way, Mike. And you're right. And then tribe again, the deeper meaning of tribe. You're so right. We don't sit around hugging each other, but what we do have is unconditional love. I don't know what that word means, but the reason, I mean, I'm speaking to the choir, preaching to the choir here with you, but for the people that are listening, you might not like a guy so much as you really like this guy. This guy's your best mate, and this guy's like some guy. But it's unconditional love because you will put your life on the line for him. You know he's going to put the life on the line for you, and you've just accepted him for who he is, and you're just going to get on with things. And I'm stunned that you've had such realization to it. You've summed it up so well.
Well, this is what I speak to companies about, and then we do leadership development, trying to solidify this or bring this home for their people to understand. So love versus like, and I've had a lot of time to reflect. We lead through love in the military. When you think about it, people are like, "What? No, you yell at people." We're like, "No, that's the movies." Think about it. I loved my men and women a lot more than I hated the enemy.
Yeah.
And one of the highest forms of compassion or love is accountability. If you have children, you see your son or your daughter do something wrong, hopefully in a very professional way, you go over there and say, "Hey, why'd you do that?" And, how do you think that impacted others around you? And you help them learn from that. That's holding them accountable. And accountability is high within the special operations community. The private sector, and some companies do have it, would like to think they have a high level of accountability, but they don't. And then the other thing, this like you just said it, and people are like, "Well, I don't like my coworker," and my response is like, "So what? So what? Get over yourself. It's not about you. It's not about him or her. It's about the team in the organization." And people are like, and I'm sure you've had this, like people are like, "Oh, you must have loved all your guys." I'm like, no, not at all. You do, or you must have liked all your guys. I'm like, no, not at all. Did I love them? Yes. Even the guy who I liked the least in my unit, if he was wounded, I would run and I would get him because I love him. But get over even high performing teams have the ability, if they don't get along, to come together on Monday, say, "What's the mission for the week? Let's accomplish this." And then on Friday, if there's a guy I don't like and he doesn't like me, he goes that way with his group of friends. I go that way, and we come back together on Monday and do the same thing over again.
Yeah.
So people are like, "Well, I've got to change jobs. I don't like the people I work with." Yeah, you've got to. That's nuanced. You got to get to a granular level and understand what don't you like. What is it that you don't like? Is it the work? Is it the people? And then ask yourselves, how am I the fucking problem? Like, how am I the problem?
Yeah.
And when two people argue because they don't like each other within any setting, a special operations setting, a business, you've got to remind people, the quality of the questions you ask yourself usually results in the quality of the life you live. And if you have two people that are arguing or bickering over something, ask them, "Hey guys, like, what is this solving? How is this helping? But more importantly, how is this good for the organization? You two that can't get along and can't agree on a course of action." And usually when you do that, you shame people into be like, "Oh, okay, well, let's go with his idea." Okay, let's go with his idea. It may be 10% better. It may not be better. It may be equal, but let's go all in on that. Let's support them. Let's put the resources in place and just get the mission done. Not that hard.
It's really interesting you said that. You said that with about a bunch of words that last about 3 minutes on bickering and arguing and you not liking someone, and the story that what is it you're not liking about that person. I had that personally on the team. Me and another guy were just getting a bit stir crazy and getting a bit bickery. And Willie Apiata, amazing warrior, Victoria Cross winner.
Yeah, that's a
and one of my bosses at the time, he wasn't my boss one of my bosses there, but not at the time. He just must have seen it because you can see stuff from bird's eye view. And he just said, I don't know if he actually did it with boxing gloves. He says, "Right, you two, either off to the gym, boxing gloves on, or sort it out right now." We just looked at each other and went, "Nah, it's sorted." Problem solved.
Yeah, that's another way to shame people into solving the problem right there. Especially for the guy who knows he's not going to win, which is probably usually was 9 times out of 10 me.
Oh gosh, look, it's amazing that the things you said there. And I was going to go through your military background, but I don't. I want to keep it to about an hour, which is digestible for people, and being respectful of your time. I would like to ask you a question that dovetails beautifully into what you've been saying. Is I'd like you to speak to transition and what advice you've got for others. And I know transition is not a linear process. Not you finish on Friday and you start on Monday at a new job. um, so you may be at different stages, but what would you like to talk to? Most likely this crowd is going to be veterans listening and or military minded. What would you like to speak to about transition and possibly some advice? And I say that, and please don't minimize what you do, because you give advice, you're paid money to do that, and you've written great books on that. So what information have you got on transition, and what advice would you like people to hear on this show about transitioning from the military into civilian life?
So I've evolved. So about the first few years after I retired, even before I retired, I stood up a foundation with the help of a guy named General Tony Kukolo, Admiral Bobby Inman, who's also the de facto director of the CIA, and Admiral William McRaven helped a little as well. And so I really focused on the veteran transition problem, predominantly in the United States, but it's pretty synonymous with what's going on in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. It's, to sugarcoat this thing, I can't. It sucks. It sucks. And there's no two ways to describe it. You are moving. So let's look at it from a cultural standpoint. In the military, we value words like we over me. We value a bit of conformity. I know some people hear that and they're like, oh, conformity. Conformity is not necessarily a bad thing. We conform to SOPs and how certain procedures are done, like placing a breach. It's just not like do whatever the hell you want. That's how people get hurt. Do we still want people to be their authentic selves? We do. Now, the public, the civilian sector, puts a little bit of puts a lot more, let's say, emphasis on individuality, me, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing. That's free enterprise. That's how that works. But there's no shared adversity amongst the public like you and I have. You and I didn't serve, but I know what you've been through, and you know what I've been through, and there's that shared adversity, that commonality, and that doesn't exist. So you also lose the greatest support mechanism in the world, the U.S. military, special operations. You have so much support in place to support the operator, and you lose that overnight, and you also lose part of your DNA.
Yep.
Like, this is who I was for 20 years. I was special operations. And naturally, again, the quality of the questions, who am I without that? And that's a tough question. And for some people, here's my recommendation. Don't jump right into a job. Now, a lot of people do, because guess what? One paycheck's going to end. And you got to put foods on the table.
Yeah.
If I had my way, I would put all veterans, or at least the ones that would raise their hand, through plant-based medicine. I'd help them for 6 months, really analyze what their next passion is, who they are without the military, without the uniform, and then slowly work into the private sector. That's a pipe dream probably. But the other thing too, the tough love part is like, hey, listen, I don't know if you guys use this term. We have a term called FNG.
Yeah.
Okay. New guy. I don't care if you won a major medal. I don't care if you have 20 years in special operations, if you're tier 1 or not. You're starting over again.
Yeah.
And you have to have a deep respect for the warriors within their respective profession.
Yeah.
Manufacturing, advertising, marketing, accounting, somebody who's put 20 years into perfecting their craft. And now you've got to go compete against them. Now, while you bring a unique set of mindsets, while you're unflappable, when everyone's losing their cool over COVID, you're like, yeah, this is just another Monday in Afghanistan. that will serve you well, but you're going to have to eat a little humble pie. And especially for senior officers, they expect like this. You said lateral transfer. Well, I was a colonel and I should have a staff of 15, an executive assistant. And like that colonel realizes really quickly, like, oh yeah, you're what we call an IC, an individual contributor. And no, you're not going to have an admin assistant. And sometimes it's not lateral, you're moving down.
Yeah.
That's okay. Just bear down, know that you're not entitled to anything. Employ what you learned within special operations and grind. If you're not willing to grind in the private sector, which is the most resource constrained environment I've ever been in, most businesses go out of business because of lack of capital. And I fund all my own businesses because I don't want to bring investors in, because that if you bring in the wrong investors, that's like a nightmare scenario. So I've got to be lean, I've got to be resourceful, and it sucks, man. I would rather go back to war, another 10 combat deployments, than build another business. This shit is hard. And so if you're not willing to grind, if you think, well, I was tier 1 for this many years, people will just give me a job and pay me a high salary, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And for a lot of vets, man, they just don't want to work anymore. And if you don't want to work anymore, hey, dude, that's your choice to make. I just can't help you.
It's interesting you said how hard it is. You literally said you'd rather go back to war. Nick Caldwell from the Mill Gym here in Australia, he was SASR for many years. He said the same thing. He said transition was harder than war, tougher than war. And he was talking about the mental side of it, not just the business side, but he was the same as you, funded his own business and went through some business partner issues, is the easiest way to say it, rather than what you've realized, hey, you're trying to take away those problems, just stick to your own finances. It is difficult. But you're also talking underneath that about a person that wants to excel. You're not just saying about someone who just goes into a job and just sits there 9 to 5 or does whatever. You're talking about someone who wants to grow and pursue excellence and challenge themselves. And yeah, there would be a massive clash of an internal struggle if someone was that mindset and was also tired, just didn't want to work. But if you do want to work, it is out there. But you've got, I love what you said about being a new guy in the civilian world. If you realize where you're at, then you'll go, okay, now I need to upskill and upskill and upskill, and it'll serve you well.
Well, and also, it's just like a lot of guys completely forget who they are and they forget the playbook.
Yeah.
That special operations playbook is powerful. There's a reason that business leaders read about special operations and not read other business books, because of the way we conduct business. And people forget that. I mean, think about it this way. Like, you didn't go through assessment selection, show up to your team in the unit and be like, hey guys, I'm Mike Sarraille. I'm new here. Here's how things are going to run. You would be taken out back, duct taped, and probably beaten with reeds until the sun came up. So why would you expect anything different in the private sector? Again, people that have put their time in. And I you know what my biggest fear was? Is I didn't want to be known as, my reputation was dependable and reliable in special operations and in tier 1. I was the officer that was selected to go and represent the community on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to get out and then be that guy where they're like, oh, dude, I heard he was a great SEAL, but just in the business world, I didn't want to be what we call a one-trick pony.
Yep.
To me, I'm driven by excellence. I know that. I'm lacking balance, and I talk about it in this book, The Need for Balance. And I'm unbalanced right now. My own book, I'm in violation of it. But that's what's required for the moment to get these companies to the next level. But yeah, I had to prove that the same model the military taught me with self-leadership, leading people, how to conduct myself, that worked in the military, can also work in the private sector if you apply it with discipline, accountability, and most of all, rigor, operational rigor.
Yep.
And dude, I've had companies that are textbook failures by book definitions, but those were also the biggest learning experiences for me. And I did not laugh at the time, because usually that means money lost.
Yeah.
And I would find a way to tell my wife. But now I can sit back and laugh and be like, yeah, I'll never make that mistake again.
That's I'm really excited to read your book, because you seem to have got that sort of blueprint that someone like me, a knuckle dragger, can understand. Um, and you've literally given me a great trailer about how you'd be duct taped and taken out the back, because that's a great analogy. When I met you, Mike, I didn't know who you were, and
Nobody does. It's okay. Everyone knows. Everyone knows the Black Rifle Coffee guys, and Andy and me and Nick are like, who are they? They're just they're the water guys.
Look, I
They
didn't.
hold the
I
water.
knew Kirk Parsley, Dr. Kirk Parsley. Let's get the terminology right. Kirk's been a friend for some time, and is again just so giving and so humble and so helpful, which is great. And he introduced me to Nick. We did a live with Nick from Egypt, I believe. And yeah, I met you in Perth. And what got me, and I'm summing it up finally, what got me was you did the speech. You pulled the team together, and at the end of the jump in front of the plane, which is what I was trying to say earlier, and you did a great speech, and it blew me away. And what you've shown today is the reason behind that. So I just want to say thank you. It's been an honor being able to share a bit of your story, and particularly about the expedition and about the mindset of what we go through there. And if just one thing that you've said in this show can help one person, it's been worth my time, and I hope it's been worth yours as well.
I can't thank you enough, and I can't even remember if I gave a speech in Australia. So the good thing is Dan Myrick was documenting everything, so I'm sure it'll come out in the end. But no, man, I appreciate that. Appreciate the fact that you guys drove people to the airfield to support us. That meant the world, and a great way to close it out. And appreciate what you're doing, man. Let me say this. I'll end it with this. The worst thing someone could do is hold on to knowledge. Like this is the whole point, is to pass, knowledge transfer, to pass what knowledge you have to those coming behind us, so that they can do this better than we are. Because right now, I don't know about you guys, but in America, we are in a mess.
It's a interesting times, isn't that what the curse is? May you live in uninteresting times.
Yes. I
uh,
know hard times make, or what is it? Hard men. It's like hard time make hard men, or soft men create hard times. Like I'm screwing it up, but you've probably heard the phrase.
yeah, we understand each other, and I'm so glad you said your name. And I was worried for like 50 minutes I hadn't pronounced your name right in the start, so we're good there, Mike.
Oh yeah, Sarraille is, dude. Nobody gets that.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor. I'm going to get your book over here, and I'll talk through that. And it's just been great to have you on. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former Special Forces operator, and check out my new project for 2023 at hownottodie.com.au, where I've combined all my Special Forces training and police officer experience to help others. Thanks for watching.